Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Visine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off. Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Visine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off.
Blast off on another episode of Hero Paranormal Podcast. I'm Ryan, broadcasting from somewhere in the Uintah Basin, and, well, the original outlaw of the airwaves, bringing you an epic episode tonight. Tonight we are talking with a longtime basin resident who, well, lived back in the basin when things were not quite the same as they are now, moved, and now she has moved back to the state. It's very interesting, some of the older stories and how similar they are to the newer stories. Christine Riley is someone I respect very much. I trust her word, and she's just an overall likable person, so I'm blessed to get her on this podcast. I'm going to try to talk to more people that are, well, familiar with some of the strangeness from back in the day, because back in the day is the only way we might know what to expect in the future. So maybe that's where we should concentrate some of our efforts, and I know a lot of people are. There's a lot of researchers tackling this, and it's one of the greatest questions of our time, the high strangeness in the deserts in remote parts of Utah. I'll tell you what, it's the type of thing that really gets my blood going, and it keeps me, well, interested. So now the shameless self-promotion. If you haven't gone to heroparanormal.com, please do. You can join for $1, $1 or $2, or if you want to go all the way in, I think it's $8 a month, and you get everything on the menu. That's it. Self-promotion over. Without further ado, Christine Riley, welcome to the Hero Paranormal Podcast.
Thanks, Ryan.
So there is a lot of background to the Uintah Basin that a lot of people have kind of overlooked. The Uintah Basin has been a place that has had high strangeness for, well, some say as long as they can remember, but you lived there quite a while ago and have some pretty amazing stories, don't you, Christine?
Yes, I do.
Could we, I don't know where to start even, I'm just going to go with what I think was one of the most fascinating, which included a story about, if I'm not mistaken, it's been many years that we haven't talked, but it was a story, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere in the epicenter of the Uintah Basin that involved a black helicopter and possibly like something under a tarp behind a semi.
Correct. Okay. I'll be glad to start there. This was after I'd had a lot of visits to the ranch that this had happened. And I was actually home. It was about 9:30 at night. And I received a phone call, and it was my daughter. And she was really excited, saying, "Mom, go outside." So the minute I went outside, I saw a helicopter actually going over my house. It was a military helicopter. And I thought, that's weird. And she says, "I'm coming to get you right now." And I just thought, okay, So I just waited for her outside. She came and got me. And as we were going down Highway 40, there was a lot of police passing us, and we kind of followed them all the way out to Fort Duchesne. And it was I really don't remember the road. Unfortunately, it was a road before the ranch and before the little Indian truck stop. But we followed the police, and we went down a little side road. It wasn't a very large road. And as we were going, I'm sorry, I have a cold today. As we were going down that road, there was people passing us, and we would actually have to pull right over because we were going to get hit. And what's the strange thing about it is it was a lot of SUVs and one flat semi-truck, which was really weird. And then after that, it was a semi truck that had, you could tell that there was something on the back of it. And this was while we were just pulled off the side of the road. And while we were pulled off to the side of the road, there was it was an Indian police that pulled up to us and asked us what we were doing. And we just told him we were going for a ride. And he says, well, I suggest you turn around and go home. But we just sat there for a minute, and he passed us, and we went on down and looked, and all we could really see, because it was late at night, is a bunch of lights out in the field. We could see the helicopter, and we sat there for a while, but we really couldn't see anything, so we just came around and went home. And so the next day, I did a little investigating. I called the police and asked them if, they could tell me what was going on, and they wouldn't say anything. And I kept asking friends and kept asking a lot of people. Then finally somebody told me it was somebody in the tribe had committed suicide. And I thought, okay, and I asked what their name was, and nobody knew the name. And so it was just really, really strange. And then after that, I had some friends that said they actually went out there and looked. We didn't go back. We should have, but there just wasn't any time. And I know at that time I was really busy, but they said they actually went out there and they looked like people had done some digging and things like that. So It was just really a strange occurrence. And I wish I really knew to this day what had really happened there. The interesting part about it was where did all those SUVs and those semi-trucks come all of a sudden,
Sure.
Because we were just right there at the height of when it happened. So it was just really interesting that maybe it was just something that went wrong and then they were just there to hurry and clean it up or something along that line. But there was a lot of, for a little small road, there was a lot of action on it for sure.
It sounds like there was a lot of action. And, like you said, especially for a rural community like, the Uintah Basin, a lot of the communities are rural enough that you will get, a few vehicles, but not like a squad, like you're mentioning, a full squad of vehicles coming in. That's pretty intense.
It is. And they had the sirens going and everything when they were going down. I thought, when we followed them and they're going down Highway 40, I mean, it was pretty, they were in a hurry to get there. So that was interesting.
Yeah, it really is. And Christine, do you remember more or less what year that would have been? It's hard sometimes, I know. Trust me.
I'm saying it had to be, I want to say it was around 1998, 1999.
Okay, yeah.
I'm not really positive on that.
Sure. No, that's pretty good.
Earlier.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
No, that's very interesting. And you're not the only one, as you said, and others have actually mimicked this exact story, told the same story in the past. And I know that a lot of people, including myself, have wondered, is this really happening? And then, to hear it from various sources, that kind of helps a little bit. There's other stuff in the basin that really kind of goes bump in the night and stuff like that. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm going to try to not use names if we can, but one of the most fascinating stories was it involved a very wealthy gentleman who had friends high up in in political circles, and I believe he had some interesting conversations with you and went to maybe some grounds or territories where you actually kind of felt some energies. Maybe does that sound familiar?
Yes, it does. And I won't mention any names, but I actually went to work for these people. And, at first I just figured, it was a normal job and everything was going okay. And they were just a little different. They had a lot of things going on. And one day he wanted me to follow him up to these cabins. And he needed to drop a truck off, and he wanted me to drive him back to the office. And I said, sure. So, I follow him up there, and he pulls in, and I got out of the car, and the minute I got out of the car, it was like the feeling you experience at the ranch at times. It's kind of something, just a peaceful feeling, almost a feeling of you just stepped out into a different, had a really strange, weird feeling. And so I was kind of just standing there, kind of trying to evaluate what I was feeling. And he came over and he goes, "Did you hear me?" And I said, "No." And he said, "So what's the matter?" I said, "Oh, I'm just feeling something kind of strange here." He goes, "What do you mean?" And I said, "I just feel a different atmosphere here." I said, "I feel really different." And he says, "You can feel that?" And I said, "Yes." And right then I thought that was kind of an odd thing to say.
Right.
And then as I was continuing being under their employment, they got calls frequently from a very, very high, probably about as high as you can go, political person.
Right.
And at first I thought it was a joke, but it definitely was not. It would be the secretary calling for the man that ran the business. And they had very extremely high ties with the government. And he actually was sent to Utah to Duchesne do some other things there. They also had a lot of times people coming in, quite a big operation that had their own helicopters and their own trucks, and they were out doing special things. They were out there exploring for things, and they told me that they were exploring for gas. But I really don't think that's true. It was really, really interesting. I just went to work one day, and the whole office was, flooded with all these construction guys, and a helicopter was there, and this great big operation. And it went on for about 2 days, and then all of a sudden they were gone, and nobody would really tell me anything about that. But I really got the impression after working there for so long and talking to a lot of people that they had something to do with the ranch. I could bet, 100% that there was something going on, and it had something that tied into the ranch. I'm not really sure what it was, but
Sure.
I do know that there were some people that, if you would go up there, they'd actually stalk you and ask you why you're there and make you leave. They're really secretive about a lot of things.
It's funny you mentioned that, Christine, because I was one of those people that got chased off, apprehended by him and his security force.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, that's just giving some validity to your story, because I actually went through it and I feared for my life. So, I mean, for whatever that's worth.
It's scary, but it wasn't just a person making up some stories. I mean, this was happening, and they were some serious. It was scary business, whatever was going on up there. Interesting. And one time I was talking to him, and he was, and I think he had a few drinks at that point, and he started telling me about their business and how he made a lot of money, and how they wanted him to come up here and investigate a few things. And I'm just like, "Well, what are you investigating?" He says, "Oh, we're just trying to see about the land and if we can make as much money on this land." And he really wouldn't tell too much, but then he did pull out this card. It was like a credit card out of his wallet. It was all this encrypted stuff on it. Mm-hmm. And he says, "I'm one of 10 people that have one of these cards." And I'm like, okay. And he was just really, really a strange people. But I know of at least 3 people that have been up on that land and actually been pulled over and threatened and told not to come up on that land. So,
Of course. And to be honest, I mean, it's very real. There's a police report to the situation I had. And I mean, I was scared. I was really scared. And the way that they acted, it kind of seemed like they didn't plan on just beating me up.
yes, that's true.
And some other interesting areas in the basin, and I know that there's been a lot of attention recently. You know, these things have a tendency to come out. Urban legends turn into something more, but this is more than an urban legend, and it kind of has been for quite some time. When you first moved to the Uintah Basin, Christine, what was your original impression of it, and when did things start to get weird?
Well, I moved there it's about 1989. I managed restaurants. I managed Pizza Hut, and they sent me out there to manage the one in Roosevelt. And at that time, the only thing I really felt that was strange is because Roosevelt was part of it was Indian land, and we had a lot of, tribal people coming to Pizza Hut. And I really didn't hear much about the ranch until probably it was about, maybe it was the 1900s. But one day we were really busy, extremely busy. And I saw all these trucks pulling into Pizza Hut one night after another. And one of them kind of had a camera thing. And I just thought, I wonder what they're doing. And then I looked out there and I saw that they were filming one of the guys. And there was probably about 15 of them that came in and they sat and ate. Mm-hmm. And the waitress came back and told me, she said, they won't even talk to me. They're so busy visiting with people. And I said, well, then, leave them alone and just let them eat. And so when they came up to pay, mm-hmm. one of them had a Utah UFO hunter's T-shirt on. And I mentioned to him, I go, I've wanted to see a UFO. And he says, well, you're in the right place. And he told me then that they were just out doing some filming at the ranch. And I said, I had never even heard of it. And so he kind of wrote down his name and his email address, and we started talking back and forth. And then one day I thought, well, he gave me the address of how to get out there. And one day I took a drive. It was a nice hot summer day. And I was able, in those days, I was able to drive down the road right up into the fence. It said, keep out. Mm-hmm. And there wasn't any barriers or anything. So I'm going down the road, and my first thing that happened was a black dog. It was kind of like a cattle dog. Mm-hmm. There was a mobile home on the left side of the road. And he came running out right in front of me and was just barking, just really, really mad, nipping at my tires. And so I had to really slow down and kind of avoid the black dog. So I got up there, pulled right up to the gate. And on the gate, it was like a cut of meat. It was fresh. You could tell there was no fur on it. It was just a great big chunk mm-hmm. of meat that was wrapped around the gate right by the keep out sign. Mm-hmm. So I took a picture of it, and I thought, that is really strange. And so I went back home and I called and talked to the gentleman about the UFO ranches, and I told him. And he kind of did some investigating, and he said that he called me back and said that was this Indian sign that they put to keep out, warning the people to keep out of that area. And I thought, that's strange. So I went out there several times after that, sometimes with friends, sometimes with my daughter. And every time I would go out there, something would happen, but we really wouldn't realize that it was abnormal or didn't really realize it was out of place till probably the next day or a couple of days that we started thinking mm-hmm. about it. Like one time we went out there, and you always had that strange feeling, and we heard water running, a lot of water running, just like we were right next to a river to the right or left of it. and so, we started, talking about, why did we hear a river? And then always see strange lights, like around by the ranch area, a lot of orbs and a lot of strange lights. And so it was just really amazing that it was all these things happening, but while you're there, you don't realize the strangeness of it. And I thought that was one of the most unique things about the ranch, that, you know, it's almost like it's some kind of intelligence that is kind of tricking you. I don't know if that's the right way to put it.
Sure. And for our listeners, you keep mentioning the ranch, and back then it was known as the old Sherman Ranch, correct?
Correct. I should have said that. Correct.
No, that's okay, because most of us, we really do know. But, you know, it's better to just kind of throw that out there, that it is the old Sherman Place. And yeah, sorry, that's all I wanted to say. Go on.
And I just wanted to touch on one of the probably strangest things that happened, and to this day, it just really, it really scares me to think of what happened that night. Well, I went out there with one friend and then my daughter, two other, there was two people. And it was a really nice hot summer night. There was always those nice hot summer nights in the Uintah Basin. And so we went out there, pulled right up to the gate. We got out, was kind of standing around, drinking our soda pop and just, kind of talking and giggling and like girls do. And then we started looking down the road towards the ranch, and I saw this red light flash on and off, up pretty high. And I thought, I said, I wonder if that's a camera. And they go, no, that's not a camera. And then right below it, we started seeing like a green light flashing. And I thought, what's going on? And I'm a very inquisitive person. It's the worst part of me. I have probably no common sense or no fear. But so I told them, I said, I'm going to crawl underneath the fence and I'm going to walk down there. And I know this is against the law.
Oh my goodness. My goodness. Okay.
At that point, with the Shermans, I really don't. Well, I guess it was still against the law. I'm sorry. But, so I'm walking down. I wasn't afraid at all. I wasn't walking at a fast pace. I was just slowly walking down. But the minute I got onto the road, it got extremely dark. And that kind of bothered me. So I had been walking for a good 5 minutes, and it didn't seem like I was really going anywhere. And I, was still, staying calm and not really concerned. And then I started hearing something moving in the the brush next to me. And I thought, it's cows. So I wasn't concerned. And so the more I walked, that sound kept getting louder. And it was almost like it was following me, going at the same pace I was. Eyes looking at me, and then I'm like, okay, I'm just walking a little bit more, and I kept looking over, and it kept looking at whatever it was getting closer to me.
Oh my!
So I decided, well, I'm going to turn around and go back. So I turned around and just started walking again. I wasn't, told myself just to be calm, but then I could just tell whatever it was close to me. And I was really in good shape at that time. I used to jog, plus manage a restaurant. So I started running at a pretty good pace. And I could just feel that whatever it was, was behind me. It's probably, I think, about 2 to 3 minutes. I started, because I couldn't see the car. I could see the car lights. And when I left, the car lights were on. So I started yelling at them to turn on the lights. And I ran, and I wasn't getting anywhere, and, there was no car lights. And then just all of a sudden, it was like I was at the gate, and I was like, oh, my goodness. And when I got to the gate, the wind was blowing really, really bad, really super bad. It was really dusty, and my friends were standing there just really upset, really hysterical. They're saying, where have you been? And at that point, I really wasn't thinking about anything, and I crawled under the gate, and I was shaky, and my skin was just red. I mean, just beet red. And so I got underneath there. We talked for a minute, and I said, well, let's get out of here.
Mm-hmm.
And we got in the car, and then we started driving out. And then here came the black dog, the famous black dog.
Yes.
He jumped on top of our car.
Oh, my
And
goodness.
he was not going to let us pass. I mean, it was really, really scary. I mean, he was doing everything. He was jumping up on the windshield, and then at one point he got down and was jumping on the doors. It was really, really scary. So we finally got to the end of the road, the ranch road, and instead of going to Highway 40, for some reason we took the opposite way, and we went this pathway into Roosevelt, and it just seemed like it took us forever, almost 40 minutes to get home.
Oh my
So when
God.
I got home, I went and looked in the mirror, and I was just totally red. I had this huge red rash. It was all over my body.
Mm-hmm.
And I was told later that it was a radiation rash, they thought. And, I mean, it took it probably 2 days before it actually went away. And it was just really, really a scary evening. And we didn't go back there probably for a week. And then finally, when we decided to go back there, we stood there at the gate, and it was a nice night again. And then we kind of walked over by some trees to the right of us, as far as you should go without a fence. And then my friend, who's a really serious person, all of a sudden, she started humming, and I'm kind of looking at her, and then she just started kind of singing the song, and then kind of started dancing, and I'm like, what are you doing?
Oh, weird.
And she said, I just feel really happy and really calm, and I was, kind of like, what is going on? And so finally, I told her, I said, well, let's go back to the car. And then she was normal again. And so we got the car and left to come home. And then I started thinking of what that ranch is really playing with our minds. So that's the honest truth. I've decided that it really has some kind of, it picks and chooses who it wants to, how can I put this? Who it wants to relate with, who it wants to kind of, have a relationship with, I guess.
Sure.
And once,
it's kind of a living thing. It acts like it sounds crazy, but the land up there is sort of a living thing.
Yes, it's true, and it controls you somehow. It really does.
Yes, it does.
Has some way of making. Well, I don't know if the right word is controlled, and I'm not best at describing things.
Sure.
But it has some kind of intelligence that it can make you believe something's happening and it may not be happening, or it can make you believe like there's a river where there's not a river. It can make you think and believe other things that's really quite dangerous. And after that, I didn't go out there for quite some time. After that, I was really quite concerned about never going out there again. So
I could see why. It's a concerning situation, and I can see why you were concerned. There's so many. Yes. That's quite a bit of high strangeness, and the area. Now, back then, Christine, I feel like you're just such a wealth of knowledge because. It was magical back then. It was so much different. And like you said, you could get right up in there. The gate was probably fresh and new and not rusty and old. And I mean, just for our listeners' ideas. And back then it seemed like there was a lot of, work taking place up there and things going on, and it seemed like there was a lot of rumors that were unsubstantiated. Did you hear any of those or see any other sightings?
Well, I did after I finally realized what that place was and started asking a lot of questions. And being in Pizza Hut, I had a crew, and they started telling me some interesting things about the Shermans and other sightings, but There was a lot of UFO sightings that, my crew was all telling me about. Nothing right now that stands out as anything different than, a lot of lights in the sky. But there's a lot of strange things that they tell me when the Shermans first moved into the ranch and the house, that there was a padlock and locks on each one of the doors. The bedrooms all had locks on them. And they had to have, in fact, it was my husband that got called out there. They had to take out all the locks and because there wasn't a way to open them, so they went out there and took all that stuff off of the doors.
Sure.
And there was a lot of things happening to them. Mrs. Sherman I think she worked at the bank, and she was really, really scared. Mm-hmm. There was always scary things happening, like she'd go in and put her groceries away and come out. They were either put somewhere else or different things like that. And they always had abnormal animals, in their yard, and different noises at night and strange things like that happening.
Yeah.
And it was just really, really bizarre. And one of the most interesting things is I had Indians working for me, and I tried to talk to them about the ranch, and they would not talk about it. They would not say a word about it. They just said that they're not supposed to talk about it. And they were really talkative young kids at most part, but they got really serious and really, wouldn't even talk about it. So,
and it is serious business.
It was just really, really an interesting place. And there's a lot of stories that I heard, but a lot of them don't. There was actually a really good UFO sighting I heard once that was that involved a gentleman that worked at the high school.
Uh-huh.
And I guess a lot of people actually
Junior
witnessed that UFO sighting, and lots of strange animal sightings. I had one. In fact, I was going out to Salt Lake early in the morning, and I was going down the highway. It was Highway 40, and I saw two large dogs on the long side of the road. And so I kind of slowed down because I didn't want them to run out in front of me. And they didn't have tails. They were really shaggy, horrible-looking animals, and they were eating roadkill. Wow. And then the first thing that I thought of is they were hyenas.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, I didn't know Utah had hyenas. And so when I got to Salt Lake, I was actually reading with my brother, and I told him about it. And he goes, "You're crazy. There's no hyenas in Utah." And and different things like we would see fireflies out at the ranch, and there's not fireflies in Utah. And just a lot of different little things like that are just really, really strange.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. And let me ask you, Christine, the lights, you mentioned lights in the sky. Do you remember the colors? Were they red, blue, or green? Or was there...
Well, the one night that we saw the lights in the sky, they were like a really... The ones that we'd always see would be bright, really bright white color in the middle. And they kind of had lights that would circle. Well, it looks like light. You'd only see the one half of the circle, but it looks like light would be covering all the way around a circle. And they would be green and blue, and it looked like they were almost off pattern. Like the one green light wouldn't stay green. It would go green and red and yellow, and they were all kind of different like that when it fleeked around. So that we saw a lot of lights like that, and we saw a lot of times just sitting out there looking at the sky, lots of big bright lights going in different patterns, which really can't be a star or can't be a helicopter. It would be going right and then stop and then drop down and then go left. So it was a lot of things like that constantly happening when we went out there. And another thing that was always really amazing about going out there at night is it was so, the sky was so intense. It was like you were looking at everything through a telescope. It was just really, all the stars were really bright, and it was just really dark, and it was just amazing how you could see such clarity of the skies when you were out there. Because when I was at home, probably about 15 miles away, I definitely did see the sky like that.
Yes, yes. I wanted to ask you as well, another question that was quite common back then is these, well, for lack of a better word, shapeshifters.
Yeah.
Did you ever talk to anybody that may have seen a dog-like creature on their hind legs?
Yeah.
Wow.
And not only that, is one of the boys that worked for me that was with the tribal, he actually told me about the shapeshifters. And at first, I really had never heard that much about it before. And I was kind of laughing at him. I go, oh, come on. And he was just really pale. And he says, I guess they believe that if you talk about them, they'll come for you.
Yes.
And they're just really, really afraid of them. And I've heard a lot of people do see a lot of different, people walking around the roads at night, and then they just kind of like disappear and run off really fast. And so they have, a lot of stories about the shapeshifters. So that was a scary thing also.
How interesting. Some things never change, so some of the things stay the same.
Yes. It was an amazing time. It really, really was. I was really upset with myself that I moved, because that's what it seemed like everything became. Really, everybody was talking about it and really becoming interested about it. And I'm like, yeah. But, it's just an amazing area.
The whole area really, really is. And
it really is.
There's so many tales and stories, but there's a lot of, people try to make it into a myth, but there's a lot of reality there. As you mentioned, the Native American employees of yours really didn't want to go there, and with good reason. I mean, this is like engaging in spiritual warfare when it's not needed. And if you're around a place like that, bad things can happen, and you can get kind of bad things attached to you.
Yes, it's true. And I have to keep going back to the black dog, Brian. Was that a shapeshifter, maybe? What was, that just wasn't no ordinary black dog, That dog actually had, it didn't really have such a problem with me entering the ranch, but it never wanted me to leave. It really would get, crazy when every night that I'd go to leave there, it would just go nuts. So, and I know that a lot of dogs are like that anyway. They're protecting their home. But this dog was just quite different. And you could tell that, especially the night that I witnessed when I went under the fence, he really didn't want me to leave that night. And then I didn't tell you the biggest factor that was strange about when I went under the fence. My friend said I was gone for an hour and a half.
You sensed...
And I felt like I was gone maybe 15 to 20 minutes. Now that really scared me.
So you lost a little time.
Yeah, that's a long time.
Yeah, that is.
And to me, it was just, I went for a little walk and got scared when I saw the eyes and tried to be brave and kept going. And then I turned around and, I was running pretty fast, because I could, feel that something was following me and chasing me.
Sure.
So,
and that situation you had with the running too, that has been that particular circumstance where you feel like you are running, but not on a treadmill, like you're not going anywhere.
It was a horrible feeling. It really was. It was just horrible.
How scary. Yeah.
And I had quite a lot of bad dreams, and and it was almost, and I've had a lot of people in that area tell me this too, that when they've experienced something out, it's almost like it's drawing you. Something's always telling you to come back. You know, something's always trying to draw you back there. That like you feel like there's some purpose that you need to go back there, and so I think that's interesting too.
Very interesting. Like it almost kind of plants seeds in people to come back.
Yeah, it does.
And Christine, a lot of people, like you
people.
said, many. And Christine, the strangest thing about that situation where you were running and you felt like you didn't make up any space or room, or you didn't make up any time. Could your friends see you as you were running?
No. They said that the minute I got under the gate, well, they said it was probably, about 30 seconds. I crawled under the gate, and then they said they could see me. And the minute I got under the gate, it was probably about 30 seconds, they said the wind started blowing really hard, and, it's quite dusty out there, and the dust was bad, so they just went and sat in the car.
Sure.
But no, they couldn't see me. Yeah, they said that they didn't see me till I was just right there at their gate.
Wow.
So.
Unbelievable. And
yeah.
You mentioned when you did see when that thing came. Well, let's see. That there used to be vehicles of a certain type, and like you said, there was a squadron of them. Where do you think all these vehicles may have been housed?
Yes, that's true. I just can't, because you don't see those kind of vehicles in the Roosevelt area,
Right.
Roosevelt, a lot of them are farmers, and, you just don't see cars like that.
Yeah, you don't see 10 brand new Escalades in a row. Yeah.
And my trucks, with flatbeds. So they had to be somewhere, and then to come there in a hurry like that was just really interesting.
It is interesting. And the other interesting thing is there has been, according to what I understand, I do believe that I have tracked down the suicide that may have been, but there's a little bit of a time discrepancy, but there was a gentleman a Native American, actually kind of an adolescent. I don't want to call him a man because he was a little younger, and it looks like he did commit suicide. But there's a lot of strange stuff that happens in that area, and a lot of people have health consequences, mental health issues, addiction issues. Have you heard or seen any of that when you were there?
I saw a lot of mental health issues, especially the ones that were coming to Pizza Hut. A lot of them did have mental health issues, and so I agree that probably one of the has a more
side effect, or who knows,
area that has a lot more of the mental health issues. And I didn't really hear of too many suicides, but a lot of the people are have addictions to alcohol or to drugs, and
sure,
and they were really not in good shape.
And there's a lot of and actually the area, there's a lot of too. I mean, it kind of seems like it's a proximity or maybe a symptom of some of these harsh energies. And I don't want to go out on a limb and say that that's what it is, but there are a lot of instances of odd medical stuff. There was a very interesting report that came out that mentioned the high rate of stillbirths in the basin, and I thought that was pretty horrifying.
Yes, I heard of that too. That is horrifying.
It is. Did you ever talk to any oil workers? Because you figure the oil workers are kind of out on those roads all night. Did you ever hear any stories from them?
I remember talking to a few of them, and it was more or less the same story, seeing strange lights in the sky, and that sort of thing.
Sure.
But that would be the only story that I, really ever heard them talking about. I really didn't have very many stories about all the different things that happened on the ranch, like the cattle mutilations and the trickster things that would always happen there. So,
were there
really nothing to tell you as far as that goes. It's something that, as far as just the UFOs.
How cool. And there's back then, and I don't know if this has changed much or not, but if I'm not mistaken, back then the Ute tribe had that whole Bottle Hollow. It was brand new. That whole complex was brand new, and it was beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, it was all really new and really nice, and they just built that really nice little convenience store gas station.
Wasn't that a stunner? That was so gorgeous when it was all brand new. I can't, and they're bringing it back. It looks really nice again.
Oh, I need to go back out there.
I
haven't been out since I came back to Utah. I drove out just once to Vernal to visit a friend, and it was just a one-day thing. And I didn't notice much when I went through there, and for some reason I didn't look at it when I came back. So I want to go out there and see the whole area again.
Yeah, and it is the whole area because some of the, the towns nearby, like Price and Green River, they have their own stories. And Green River, I heard some pretty wild stories about some strange stuff down there. Did you ever hear anything from that area?
No, I never heard anything from that area.
Well, I'll tell you the one this is weird. I'll tell you the one that I was told by a local. I went down there looking for, they have it was an applications base of some sort with military devices, but I can't, it was like a missile silo, I believe. Maybe a launch site, but nothing extreme. And a lot of people have gone out and looked at it since Popular Mechanics came out with a article saying it was the quote unquote new Area 51, which it isn't, but a lot of people went out and looked at it. And I guess while this was happening, some strange kind of MIB figures started popping up as the droves of people came in. And I remember a story, I want to say it was, they were in an older 50s or 60s car. The woman had a big beehive hairdo, and the guy had the MIB dark glasses and the fedora cap and the white shirt with the black tie. And I think there was one in the back that was dressed the same. And everybody just thought it was kind of the way they were and that it was nothing interesting. But apparently the woman at some point, and this was viewed by a few people, she started to kind of short circuit or act strange or robotic or I don't know. And I guess they got the heck out of there when that happened. These three MIB types, when one of them started to have a breakdown, they left. But they were asking people where they were from, why they were there, what they were looking at. And were there ever any MIB type stories from the basin?
I'm glad you mentioned that because I didn't tell you that about at the beginning how we were talking about the gentleman, the rich gentleman.
Okay.
He actually had, it wasn't a lady, but he'd actually have two men in black type looking guys that would visit the office, probably on at least 3 occasions. They would come in, and one of them actually would have, and this, I know it sounds always bizarre, but I'm telling the truth. One would have a briefcase, and it would actually be chained to his arm, and
my gosh.
Here I am, just a little secretary looking at, what's going on, and I'm so curious, and I'm like always asking so many questions, but they would go back into this office and shut the door, and they would come out, and they just almost looked like robots. They didn't look at me, they didn't talk to me, and they would just head right straight out the door. And I kept trying to ask the gentleman that owned it and his wife, but they really, in fact, started getting really, really upset with me, and sometimes actually kind of threatening me, wanting me to just, kind of be quiet and mind my place type of thing.
Sure.
So that was kind of made me feel very uncomfortable too.
Yeah, and it's it's scary when you're in a small town and everybody knows everybody and the same people, they know the police and control the police and, this stuff happens. Very scary stuff. And in Duchesne's kind of a magical place too, as Roosevelt and as Vernal is. In Duchesne, was there ever any high strangeness in Duchesne that you heard of, Christine?
No, the only strangeness that I thought of is when he hired all of those contractors that Vanessa was doing something in the canyons there. And what was interesting is they'd come back with a lot of soil samples. So they were actually up there, getting soil samples and whatever it was pretty secretive too. So
it sounds like it.
Really, really odd, I thought. I really wonder what they were searching for, It seemed really strange.
It makes you wonder if they're taking soil samples that there's something in the ground that they're looking for. That's really interesting. And that whole ridge, that whole area, those ridges all through the Uintah Basin, there's a lot of abnormally, I don't know what to call it. Like you said, big winds that come in from absolutely nowhere on a quiet night. Thunderstorms that roll in when you least expect them, ball lightning and stuff that, you just don't see other places. Would you agree?
Yes, I agree totally.
It's fun.
It's very, very strange. And again, though, at the time that you're there and you're witnessing it, it's almost like you're hypnotized and you're going, oh, this is normal. That's the only way I can describe it is that when you're witnessing all of it, it just doesn't seem out of place till later on when you kind of start thinking about it.
Wow. So true. I am so glad that you've taken some time to talk to us about all these amazing things, because the basin's an amazing place, and no matter how far back you go, it seems like amazing things were taking place.
All of the main important things that keep fresh in my mind, I think I've gone over.
Well, those were quite a few and quite a lot, and I'm so appreciative for your time. I know you're busy, and I know that you scheduled this with me. I really appreciate it, and I hope to stay in touch with you, and be blessed, Christine. Thank you.
You too. Thank you, Ryan. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye. Well, there you have it, guys. Christine Riley. She is a resident of the basin, but from long ago, and was there for quite a while and got to see some, pretty interesting things. And it's neat to talk to the residents of the basin, because I think that, even though the times change, I love that new saying, there's nothing new under the sun. And they were seeing the same things. So anyway, until next time, guys, keep your eyes to the skies, feet on the ground, but don't forget to take a look around.
Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Visine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off. Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Visine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off. Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Visine. Blast off.